Hello. Oh yes. Oh yes. It says live. It is alive. It's alive. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. Okay. Need some water after that one. Whew. Anyway. Hello. Hello. So welcome back to our reading session. We are on chapter 7 of The Hobbit, of course. What we'll do is we'll read through this. I do have some other stuff I have to get done, so we might end up just doing the single chapter. We might do I also don't know how long this chapter is, so that's another interesting point. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Okay, so 7 is page 153 and 8 is page 188. So not too bad. Okay. We'll see how it goes. And then if we're feeling up for it, what we'll do is we'll hop over to a short story. But let's go ahead and get rolling. Okay, I was trying to remember what happened. Oh, right, they got picked up by the eagles. That was it. That was what happened. Chapter 7, Queer Lodgings. The next morning, Bilbo woke up with the early sun in his eyes. He jumped up and took a look at the time and Yep. Wow. Okay, let's reframe. Let's recenter. Try it again. It's okay. Wow. Yeah. Okay. The next morning, Bilbo woke up with the early sun in his eyes. He jumped up to look at the time and to go put a kettle on and found he was not at home at all. So he sat down and wished in vain for a wash and a brush. He did not get either, nor tea, nor toast, nor bacon for his breakfast, only cold mutton and rabbit, and after that he had to get ready for a fresh start. This time he was allowed to climb onto the eagle's back and cling between its wings. The air rushed over him as he shut his eyes. The dwarves were crying farewell and promising to repay the Lord of the Eagles if ever they could, and off rose 15 great birds from the mountainside. The sun was still close to the eastern edge of things. The morning was cool, and the mists in the valleys and the hollows twined here and there about the peaks and pinnaces of the hills. Bilbo opened an eye to peep and saw the birds already high up, and the world was far away, and the mountains were falling behind them to the distance. He shut his eyes again and held on tighter. "Don't pinch," said the eagle. "You need not be frightened like a rabbit, even if you look rather like one. It's a fair morning with a little wind. What's finer than flying?" Bilbo would have liked to say a warm bath and a late breakfast and a lawn afterwards, but he thought better of it. Thought better to say nothing at all and let go of his clutch just a teeny bit. After a good while, the eagles must have seen the point they were making for, even from their great height, for they began to go down, circling round in great spirals. They did this for a long while, and at last the hobbit opened his eyes again. The earth was much nearer, and below them were trees that looked like oaks and elms, and wide grasslands, and a river running through it all. But cropping up out of the hills, right in the path of the stream which looped about itself, was a great rock, almost a hill of stone, like a last outpost of the distant mountains, or a huge piece cast miles into the plain by some giant among the giants. Quickly now, to the top of this rock the eagles swooped, and one by one they set off their passengers. "Farewell," they cried, "wherever you fare, till your eyries receive you at the journey's end." That is the thing to say among the eagles. "May the wind under your wings bear you where the sun sails and the moon walks," answered Gandalf, who knew the correct reply. And so they parted. And though the Lord of the Eagles became in after days the king of all birds and wore a golden crown, and his 15 chieftains golden collars made of gold that the dwarves gave him, Bilbo never saw them again, except for high and far off in the battle of the 5 armies. But as that comes at the end of this tale, we shall say no more about that now. There was a flat space at the top of the hill of stone and a well-worn path with many steps leading down to the river, across which a ford of huge flat stones led to a grassland beyond the stream. There was a little cave, a wholesome one, with a pebbly floor at the foot of the steps and near the end of the stony ford. Here the party gathered and discussed what was to be done. I was meant to see you all safe, if possible, over the mountains, said the wizard, and now, by good management and good luck, I have done it. Indeed, we are now a good deal further east than I ever meant to come with you, for after all, this is not my adventure. I may look in on it again before it is all over, but in the meanwhile, I have some other pressing business to attend to. The dwarves groaned and looked most distressed, and Bilbo wept. They had begun to think that Gandalf was going to come with them all the way and would always be there to help them out of difficulties. I'm not going to disappear this very instant, said he. I can give you a day or two more. Probably I can help you out of your present plight, and I need a little help myself. We have no food, and no baggage, and no ponies to ride, and you don't know where you are. Now, I can tell you that. You are still some miles north of the path, which we should have been following if we had not left the mountain pass in a hurry. Very few people live in these parts unless they have come here since I was down this way, which was some years ago. But there is somebody that I know of who lives not far away. That somebody made these steps in the great rock, the Carrock, I believe he calls it. He does not come here often, certainly not in the daytime, and it is no good waiting for him. In fact, it would be very dangerous. We must go and find him, and if all goes well at our meeting, I think we shall be off, and wish you, like the eagles, farewell wherever you fare. They begged him not to leave them. They offered dragon gold and silver and jewels, but he would not change his mind. We shall see, he said, and I think I have earned already some of your dragon gold when you have got it. After that, they stopped pleading. Then they took off their clothes and bathed in the river, which was shallow and clear at the stony ford. When they were dried in the sun and were now strong and warm, and they were refreshed, which was now strong and warm, they were refreshed, if still sore and a little hungry. Soon they crossed the ford carrying the little hobbit and began to march through the long green grass down the lines of the wide-armed oaks and tall elm trees. Why is it called Carrock? Asked Bilbo as he went along at the wizard's side. He called it Carrock because Carrock is his word for it. He calls things like that Carrocks, and this one is the Carrock because it is the only one near his home and he knows it well. Who calls it? Who knows it? The somebody I spoke of. A very great person. You must all be very polite when I introduce you. I shall introduce you slowly, 2 by 2, I think. And you must be careful not to annoy him, or heaven knows what will happen. He can be appalling when he is angry, although he is kind enough if humored. Still, I warn you, he gets angry easily. He gets hangy. The dwarves all gathered around when they heard the wizard talking like this to Bilbo. Is that the person you are taking us to now? They asked. Couldn't you find someone more easy-tempered? Hadn't you better explain it all a bit clearer? And so on. Yes, it certainly is. No, I could not, and as I was explaining very carefully, answered the wizard crossly, if you must know more, his name is Baron. He is very strong, and he's a skin changer. What? A furrier? Man that calls rabbits cronies when he doesn't turn their skin into squirrels? Asked Bilbo. Good gracious heavens, no, said Gandalf. Do not be a fool, Mr. Baggins, if you can help it. And in the name of all wonder, don't mention the word furrier again as long as you are within 100 miles of this house, nor rug, cape, tippet, muff, or any other such unfortunate word. He's a skin changer. He changes his skin. Sometimes he is a huge black bear. Sometimes he's a great, strong, black-haired man with huge arms and a great beard. I cannot tell you much more, although that ought to be enough. Some say that he is a bear descended from the great and ancient bears of the mountains that lived before the giants came. Others say he is one of the men who descended from the first men who lived before Smaug or the other dragons came to this part of the world and before the goblins came into the hills out of the north. I cannot say, though I fancy the last is true. He is not the sort of person to ask questions of. At any rate, he is under no enchantment but his own. He lives in an oak wood and has a great wooden house. And as a man, he keeps cattle and horses, which are nearly as marvelous as himself. They work for him and talk to him. He does not eat them. Neither does he hunt nor eat wild animals. He keeps hives and hives of great fierce bees and lives mostly on cream and honey. As a bear, he ranges far and wide. I once saw him sitting all alone at the top of Carrick at night, watching the moon sink towards the misty mountains, and I heard him growl in the tongue of the bears, "The day will come when they will perish, and I shall go back." That is why I believe he came from the mountains himself. Bilbo and the dwarves had now plenty to think about, and they asked no more questions. There was still a long way to walk before them. Up the slope and down dale they plodded. It grew very hot. Sometimes they rested under trees, and then Bilbo felt so hungry he would have eaten acorns if any had been ripe enough yet to fall into the ground. It was the middle of the afternoon before they noticed the great patch of flowers had begun to spring up, all the same kinds growing together as if they'd been planted. Especially there were clover, waving patches of corkscomb clover and purple clover, and wide stretches of short, white, sweet, honey-smelling clover. There was a buzzing and a whirring and a droning in the air. Bees were busy everywhere, and such bees! Bilbo had never seen anything like them. If one were to sting me, he thought, I should swell up as big again as I am. They were bigger than hornets. The drones were bigger than your thumb, and a good deal, and bands of yellow and deep black on their bodies shone like fiery gold. "We're getting near," said Gandalf. "We're on the edge of his bee pastures." After a while, they came to a belt of tall, very ancient oaks, and beyond these to a high thorn hedge through which you could neither see nor scramble. "You'd better wait here," said the wizard to the dwarves, "and when I call or whistle, begin to come after me. You will see the way I go, but only in pairs, mind. About 5 minutes between each pair of you. Bumbor's the fattest and will do for 2. You had better come alone and last. Come on, Mr. Baggins. There is a gate somewhere around this way." And with that, off he went along the hedge, taking the frightened hobbit with him. They soon came to a wooden gate, high and broad, beyond which they could see gardens and a cluster of low wooden buildings, some thatched and made of unshapen logs, barns, stables, sheds, and a long, low wooden house. Inside, on the southward edge of the great hedge, were rows and rows of hives with bell-shaped tops made of straw. The noise of the giant bees flying to and fro and crawling in and out filled the air. The wizard and the hobbit pushed open the heavy creaking gate and went down a wide track towards the house. Some horses, very sleek and well-groomed, trotted up across the grass and looked at them intently with very intelligent faces. Then off they galloped to the building. "They've gone to tell him of our arrival, of the arrival of strangers," said Gandalf. Soon they reached the courtyard, 3 walls of which were formed by the wooden house and its 2 long wings. In the middle there was lying a great oak trunk with many lopped branches. Beside it, standing near it, was a huge man with thick black beard and hair, great bare arms and legs with knotted muscles. He was clothed in a tunic of wool down to his knees, and he was leaning on a large axe. The horses were standing by him, with their noses at his shoulder. "Oh, here they are," he said to the horses. "They don't look dangerous. You can be off." He laughed a great rolling laugh and put down his axe and came forward. "Who are you and what do you want?" he asked gruffly, standing in front of them and towering tall above Gandalf. As for Bilbo, he could easily have trotted through his legs without ducking his head to miss the fringe of the man's dark brown tunic. "I am Gandalf," said the wizard. "Never heard of him," growled the man. "And what's this little fellow?" he said, stooping down to frown at the hobbit, with his bushy black eyebrows. "That is Mr. Baggins, a hobbit of good family and unimpeachable reputation," said Gandalf. Bilbo bowed. He had no hat to take off and was painfully conscious of his many missing buttons. "I am a wizard," continued Gandalf. "I have heard of you, though you have not heard of me. But perhaps you have heard of my good cousin, Radagast, who lives near the southern borders of Mirkwood?" "Yes, not a bad fellow as wizards go, I believe. I used to see him now and again," said Baron. "Well, now I know who you are, or who you say you are. What do you want?" To tell the truth, we have lost our luggage, man, nearly lost our way, and rather in need of help, or at least assistance. I may say we have had a rather bad time with goblins in the mountains. Goblins, said the man less gruffly. Oh, so you've been having trouble with them, have you? What'd you go near them for? We did not mean to. They surprised us at night in a pass which we had come to cross as we were coming out over the lands to the west and into these countries. It's a long tale. Then you had better come inside and tell me some of it, if it won't take all day, said the man, leading the way through the dark door that opened out of the courtyard and into the house. Following him, they found themselves in a wide hall with a fireplace in the middle. There was a wood fire burning, and the smoke was rising to the blackened rafters in search of a way out through the opening in the roof. They passed through the dim hall, lit only by the fire and the hole above it, and came to another smaller door, onto a sort of veranda propped up on wooden posts made of single tree trunks. It faced south and was still warm and filled with light of the westering sun, which slanted onto it and fell golden into the garden full of flowers that came right up to the steps. There we go, there's the picture. Here they sat on wooden benches while Gandalf began his tale, and Bilbo swung his dangling legs and looked at the flowers in the garden, wondering what their names could be, as he had never seen half of them before. I was coming over the mountains with a friend or two, said the wizard. Or two? I can only see one, and a little one at that, said Beorn. Well, to tell you the truth, I did not like to bother you with a lot of us until I found out if you were busy. I will give a call, if I may. Go on, call away. So Gandalf gave a long, shrill whistle, and presently Thorin and Dori came around the house by the garden path and stood bowing low before them. One or three, you meant, I see, said Beorn. These aren't hobbits, these are dwarves. Thorin Oakenshield at your service. Dori at your service, said the two dwarves, bowing again. I don't need your service, thank you, said Beorn. But I expect you need mine. I am not over fond of dwarves, but if it is true you are Thorin, son of Thrain, son of Thror, I believe, and that is your companion, and that your companion is respectable, and that you are enemies of the goblins, are not up to any mischief in my lands. What are you up to, by the way? They were on their way to visit the land of their fathers, away east beyond Mirkwood, put in Gandalf, and it is entirely an accident that we were in your lands at all. We were crossing by the high pass that should have brought us to the road that lies to the south of your country when we were attacked by the evil goblins, as I was about to tell you. Go on telling then, said Beorn, who was never very polite. There were terrible storms, and stone giants were out hurling rocks at the heads, and at the heads of the pass, we took refuge in a cave, and the Hobbit and I and several of our companions. Do you call two several? Well, no, as a matter of fact, there were more than two. Where are they? Eaten? Killed? Gone home? Well, no, they don't seem to have come when I whistled. Shy, I expect. You see, we are very much afraid that we are rather a lot for you to entertain. Go on, whistle again. I am in for a party, it seems, and one or two more won't make much of a difference, growled Beorn. Gandalf whistled again, but Nori and Ori were there almost before he had stopped, for you remember Gandalf had told them to come in pairs every 5 minutes. Hello! Oh, sorry. Hello, said Beorn. You came pretty quick. Where were you hiding? Come on, my jack-in-the-boxes. Nori at your service, Ori at... They began, but Beorn interrupted them. Thank you, and I want your help. I shall ask for it. Sit down, and let's get on with this tale, or it will be supper time before it is ended. As soon as we were asleep, went on Gandalf, a crack at the back of the cave opened. Goblins came down and grabbed the hobbit and the dwarves and our troop of ponies. Troop of ponies? Were you a traveling circus? Were you carrying lots of goods? Or do you always call 6 a troop? Oh, no, as a matter of fact, there were more than 6 ponies. There were more than 6 of us, and, well, here are 2 more. Just at that moment, Balin and Dwalin appeared and bowed so low that their beards swept the stone floor. The big man was frowning at first, but they did their best to be frightfully polite and kept on nodding and bending and bowing, waving their hoods before their knees in proper dwarf fashion, till he stopped frowning and burst into a chuckling laugh. It looked so comical. Troop was right, he said. A fine comic one. Come in, my merry men. What is your names? I don't want your service just now. Only your names when you sit down and stop wagging. Balin and Wallen, they said, not daring to be offended, and sat flop on the floor, looking rather surprised. Now go on again, said Bjorn to the wizard. Oh, where was I? Oh, yes. I was not grabbed. I killed a goblin or two with a flash. Good, growled Bjorn. Is some good being a wizard then, and slipped inside the crack before it closed. I followed down the hall, down into the main hall, which was crowded with goblins. The great goblin was there with 30 or 40 armed guards. I thought to myself, even if they were not chained together, what can a dozen do against so many? A dozen. That's the first time I've heard 8 called a dozen. Or have you still got some more jacks you haven't yet come out of their boxes? Well, yes, there seem to be a couple more here now. Philly and Killy, I believe, said Gandalf, as these two now appeared and stood smiling and bowing. That's enough, said Bjorn. Sit down and be quiet. Go on now, Gandalf. So Gandalf went on with his tale until he came to the fight in the dark and the discovery of the lower gate, and their horror when they found that Mr. Baggins had been mislaid. We counted ourselves and found that there was no hobbit. There were only 14 of us left. 14? That's the first time I've heard 1 from 10 leave 14. You mean 9, or else you have not told me yet all the names of your party. Of course, you haven't seen Oin and Glowing yet, and bless me, here they are. I hope you will forgive them for bothering you. Oh, let them sit down. Let them all come. Hurry, come along. You two sit down. But look here, Gandalf, even now, you've only got yourself and 10 dwarves and a hobbit that was lost. That makes 11 plus 1 mislaid, and not 14, unless wizards count differently than other people. But now, go get on with your tale. Bjorn did not show up more than he could help, but he had really become to be very interested. You see, in the old days, he had known the very part of the mountains that Gandalf was describing. He nodded and he growled when he heard of the hobbits' reappearance and of their scramble down the stone slide and of the wolf ring in the woods. When Gandalf came to their climbing into the trees with the wolves all underneath, he got up and strode around and muttered, "Wish I'd been there. Would have given them more than fireworks." Well, said Gandalf, very glad to see that his tale was making a good impression. I did the best I could. There we were with the wolves, going mad underneath us, and the forest beginning to blaze in places, when the goblins came down from the hills and discovered us. They yelled with delight and sang, making fun of us. 15 birds in 5 fir trees. Good heavens, growled Bjorn. Don't pretend goblins can't count. They can. 12 isn't 15, and they know it. And so do I. There were Bifur and Bombor as well. I haven't ventured to introduce them before, but here they come. In came Bifur and Bofur, and me, gasped Bombor, puffing along behind. He was fat and also angry at being left to last. He refused to wait 5 minutes and followed immediately after the other two. Well, now there are 15 of you, and since goblins can count, I suppose that's all that we're up in the trees. Now perhaps we can finish this story without any more interruptions. Mr. Baggins saw how clever Gandalf had been. The interruptions were really made Bjorn more interested in the story, and the story had kept him from sending the dwarves off once like suspicious beggars. He never invited people into his house if he could help it, and he had very few friends, and they lived a good way away, and he never invited more than a couple of these to his house at a time. Now he had got 15 strangers sitting on his porch. By the time the wizard had finished his tale and told of the eagle's rescue and how they had all been brought to the Carrock, the sun had fallen behind the peaks of the misty mountains, and the shadows were long in Bjorn's garden. "A very good tale," said he. "The best I have heard in a while. If all beggars could tell such a good one, they might find me kinder. You may be making it all up, of course, but you deserve a supper for the story all the same. Let's have something to eat." "Yes, please," they all said together. Thank you very much. Inside the hall, it was quite dark. Bjorn clapped his hands, and in trotted 4 beautiful white ponies with several large, long-bodied gray dogs. Bjorn said something to them in a queer language, like animal noise, turned to talk. They went out again and soon came back carrying torches in their mouths, with which they lit the fire and stuck in low brackets in the pillars in the hall about the central hearth. The dogs could stand on their hind legs when they wished and carry things out with their forefeet. Quickly, they got out boards and trestles from the side walls and set them up near the fire. Then, bah, bah, was heard, and in came some snow-white sheep led by a large coal-black ram. One bore a white cloth embroidered on the edges with figures of animals. Others bore on their broad backs trays and bowls and platters and knives and wooden spoons, which the dogs took and quickly laid onto the trestle tables. These were very low enough even for Bilbo to sit at comfortably. Besides them, a pony pushed 2 low-seated benches with wide rush bottoms and little short, thick legs for Gandalf and Thorin, while at the far end, he put Bjorn's big black chair of the same sort, which he sat on with his great legs stuck out far under the table. These were all the chairs he had in his hall, and probably had them low like the tables for the convenience of the wonderful animals that waited on him. What did the rest sit on? They were not forgotten. The other ponies came in rolling drum-shaped sections of logs, so smooth and polished, and low enough even for Bilbo. So they were all seated at Bjorn's table, and the hall had not seen such a gathering in many a year. There they had supper, or dinner, such as they had not had since they left the last homely house in the west and said goodbye to Elrond. The light of the torches in the fire flickered about them, and on the table were 2 tall red beeswax candles. All the time they ate, Bjorn in his deep rolling voice told tales of the wild lands on this side of the mountains, and especially the dark and dangerous wood that now lay stretched far to the north and south, a day's ride before them, barring their way to the east, the terrible forest of Mirkwood. The dwarfs listened and shook their beards, for they knew that they must soon venture into that forest, and that after the mountains, it was the worst of the perils that they had to pass before they came to the dragon's stronghold. When dinner was over, they began to tell tales of their own, but Bjorn seemed to be growing drowsy and paid little heed to them. They spoke most of gold and silver and jewels and the making of things by smithcraft, and Bjorn did not appear to care for such things. There were no things of gold or silver in this hall, and few save knives were made of metal at all. They sat long at the table with their wooden drinking bowls filled with mead. The dark night came on outside. The fires in the middle of the hall were built with fresh logs, and the torches were put out, and still they sat in the light of the dancing flames, with the pillars of the house standing tall behind them and dark at the top like the forest of trees. Whether it was magic or not, it seemed to Bilbo that he heard the sounds of wind and the screeching stirring of the rafters and the hoot of owls. Soon he began to nod with sleep, and the voices started to grow far away until he woke up with a start. It is so lovely. The great door had creaked and slammed. Bjorn was gone. The dwarves were sitting cross-legged on the floor around the fire, and presently they began to sing. Some of the verses were like this, but there were many more, and their singing went on for a long while. The wind was withered in the heath, but in the forest stirred no leaf. Their shadows lay by night and day, and dark things silent crept beneath. The wind came down from the mountains cold, and like a tide it roared and rolled. The branches groaned, the forest moaned, and the leaves were laid upon the mold. The wind went in from west to east, all movement in the forest ceased. But shrill and harsh across the marsh, its whistling voices were released. The grasses hissed, their tassels bent, the reeds were rattling, on it went. O'er shaken pool under heaven cool, where racing clouds were torn and rent. It passed the lonely mountain bare, and swept above the dragon's lair, and there, back black and dark, lay boulders stark, and flying smoke was in the air. It left the world and took its flight over the wide seas of night, and the moon set sail upon the gale, and stars were fanned to leaping light. Bilbo began to nod again. Suddenly up stood Gandalf. "It is time for sleep," he said, "for us, but I think not for Bjorn. In his hall we can rest sound and safe, but I warn you not to forget what Bjorn said before he left us. You must not stray outside until the sun is up, at your peril." Bilbo found that beds had already been laid on the side of the hall and on a sort of raised platform between the pillars of the outer wall. For him there was a low mattress of straw and woolen blankets. He snuggled in them very gladly, summertime though it was. The fire burned low and he fell asleep. Yet in the night he woke. The fire had now sunk to a few embers. The dwarves and Gandalf were all asleep, to judge by their breathing. A splash of white on the floor came from the high moon, which was peering down through the smoke hole in the roof. There was a growling sound outside, the noise of some great animal scuffling at the door. Bilbo wondered what it was, and whether it could be Bjorn in his enchanted shape, and if he could come in as a bear and kill them. He dived under the blankets and hid his head and fell asleep again in spite of his fears. It was full morning when he woke. One of the dwarves had fallen over him in the shadows where he lay and had rolled down with a bump from the platform to the floor. It was Beaufort, and he was grumbling about it when Bilbo opened his eyes. "Get up, lazy bones," he said, "or there'll be no breakfast left for you." Bilbo jumped up. "Breakfast?" he cried. "Where's breakfast?" "Mostly inside us," answered the other dwarves, who were moving about the hall. "But what is left is out on the veranda. We've been about looking for Bjorn ever since the sun got up, but there is no sign of him anywhere. We thought we'd found breakfast laid out as soon as we went out. We found breakfast laid out as soon as we went out." "Where's Gandalf?" asked Bilbo, moving off to find something to eat as quick as he could. "Oh, out and about somewhere," they told him, but there was no sign of the wizard all that day until the evening. Just before sunset, he walked into the hall where the Hobbit and the dwarves were having supper, waited on by Bjorn's wonderful animals, as they had been all day. Of Bjorn they had seen or heard nothing since the night before, and they were getting puzzled. "Where's our host, and where have you been all day yourself?" they cried. "One question at a time, and none till after supper. I haven't had a bite since breakfast." At last, Gandalf pushed away his plate and jug. He'd eaten 2 whole loaves with masses of butter and honey and clotted cream, and drunk at least a quart of mead. Sorry. At least a quart of mead, and he took out his pipe. "I will answer the second question first," he said. "But bless me, this is a splendid place for smoke rings." Indeed, for a long time, they could get nothing more out of him. He was so busy sending smoke rings, dodging around the pillars of the hall, changing them into all sorts of different shapes and colors, and sending them at last, chasing one another out the hole of the roof. They must have looked very queer from the outside, popping into the air one after another, green and blue and red and silver gray and yellow and white. Big ones, little ones dodging through big ones and joining into figure eights and going off like a flock of birds into the distance. "I have been picking out bear tracks," said he at last. "There have been a regular bears meeting outside here last night. I soon saw that Bjorn could not have made all of them. There were far too many of them, and they were various sizes, too. I should say there were little bears, large bears, ordinary bears, and gigantic big bears, all dancing outside from dark to nearly dawn. And they came from every direction, except from the west, over the river, from the mountains. In that direction, only one set of footprints led. None coming, only ones going away from here. I followed these as far as the Carrock. There they disappeared into the river, but the water was too deep and strong beyond the rock for me to cross. It's easy enough, you remember, to get to this bank from Carrock by the ford, but on the other side, there's a cliff standing up from a swirling channel. I had to walk miles before I could find a place where the river was wide and shallow enough for me to wade and swim, and then miles back again to pick up the tracks. By that time, it was too late for me to follow them far. They went straight off in the direction of the pine woods on the east side of the Misty Mountains, where we had our pleasant little party with the wargs the night before last. And now I think I've answered the first question, too," ended Gandalf. And he sat a long while silent. Bilbo thought he knew what the wizard meant. "Shall we do?" he cried. "If he leads the wargs and the goblins down here, we shall all be caught and killed. I thought you said he was not a friend of theirs." "And so I did, And don't be silly. You had better go to bed. Your wits are all sleepy. The hobbit felt quite crushed, and as there seemed nothing else to do, he did go to bed, and while the dwarves were still singing songs, he dropped to sleep, still puzzling his little head about Bjorn, till he dreamed a dream of hundreds of black bears dancing slow, heavy steps around and around in the moonlight in the courtyard. Then he woke up when everyone else was asleep, and he heard the same scraping, scuffling, snuffling, and growling as before. Next morning, they were all awakened by Bjorn himself. "So here you all are still," he said. He picked up the hobbit and laughed. "Not eaten up by wargs or goblins or wicked bears yet, I see." And he poked Mr. Baggin's waistcoat most disrespectfully. "Little bunny is getting nice and fat again on bread and honey," he chuckled. "Come and have some more." So they all went to breakfast with him. Bjorn was most jolly for a change. Indeed, he seemed to be in a splendidly good humor and set them all laughing with funny stories. Nor did they have to wonder long where he had been or why he was so nice to them, for he told them himself. He had been over the mountain and right back, over the river and right back to the mountains, from which you can guess that he could travel quickly in bear shape at any rate. From the burnt wolf glade, he soon found out that part of the story was true, but he found more than that. He had caught a warg and a goblin wandering through the woods. From these, he got news. The goblin patrols were still hunting with the wargs for the dwarves, and they were fiercely angry because of the death of the great goblin, and also because of the burning of the chief wolf's nose and the death from the wizard's fire of many of his chief servants. So much they told him when he forced them, but he guessed there was more wickedness than this afoot, and that a great raid of the whole goblin army with their wolf allies into the land shadowed by the mountains might soon be made to find the dwarves or take vengeance on the men and creatures that lived there, and who they thought might be sheltering them. "It was a good story, that of yours," said Bjorn, "but I like it still better now that it is true. You must forgive me for not taking your word. If you lived near the edge of Mirkwood, you would take the word of no one you did not know as well as your brother or better. As it is, I can only say that I have hurried home as fast as I could to see that you were safe and to offer any help that I can. I shall think more kindly of dwarves after this." "Kill the great goblin! Kill the great goblin!" He chuckled fiercely to himself. "What did you do with the goblin and the warg?" asked Bilbo. "Come and see," said Bjorn, and they followed around the house. A goblin's head was stuck outside the gate and a warg's skin nailed to the tree beyond. Bjorn was a fierce enemy, but now he was their friend, and Gandalf thought it wise to tell him their whole story and the reason of their journey so that they could get the most help that he could offer. This is what he promised to do for them. He would provide ponies for each of them and a horse for Gandalf for their journey through the forest, and he would lade them with food to last them for weeks with care, and packed so as to be as easy as possible to carry. Nuts, flowers, sealed jars of dried fruits, and red earthenware pots of honey, and twice-baked cakes that would keep a good long time, and on a little of which they could march far. The making of these things was one of his secrets, but honey was in them, as in most of his foods, and they were good to eat, although they made one thirsty. Water, he said, they would not need to carry on this side of the forest, for there were streams and springs along the road. But your way through Mirkwood is dark, dangerous, and difficult, he said. Water is not easy to find there, nor food. The time has not yet come for nuts, although it may be past and gone indeed before you get to the other side. And nuts are about all that grows there fit for food. The wild things are dark, queer, and savage. I will provide you with skins to carry water, and I will give you some bows and arrows, but I doubt very much whether you'll find anything in Mirkwood that will be wholesome to eat or drink. There's one stream there I know, black and strong, which crosses the path. That you should neither drink of nor bathe in, for I have heard it carries enchantment and a great drowsiness and forgetfulness. And in the dim shadows of that place, I don't think you will shoot anything wholesome or unwholesome without straying from the path. And that you must not do. For any reason. That's all the advice I can give you. Beyond the edge of the forest, I cannot help you much. You must depend on your luck and your courage and the food I send with you. At the gate of the forest, I must ask you to send back my horse and my ponies. But I wish you all speed, and my house is open to you if you ever come back this way again. They thanked him, of course, with many bows and sweepings of the hood, and with many at your service, O master of wide wooden halls. But their spirits sank at his grave words, and they all felt the adventure was far more dangerous than they had thought. While all the time, even if they passed the perils of the road, the dragon was waiting at the end. All that morning, they were busy with preparations. Soon after midday, they ate with Bjorn for the last time, and after the meal, they mounted their steeds he was lending them, and bidding them many farewells as they rode off through his gate at a good pace. As soon as they left the high hedges to the east of his fenced lands, they turned north and then bore to the northwest. By his advice, they were no longer making for the main forest road to the south of the lands. Had they followed the path, their path would have led them down the stream from the mountains that join the great river miles south of the Karak. At that point, there was a deep fjord which they might have crossed if they still had their ponies, and beyond it a track that led to the skirts of the wood and the entrance to the old forest road. But Bjorn had warned him that way was often used by goblins, while the forest road itself, he had heard, was overgrown and disused in the eastern end, and led to impassable marshes where the paths had long been lost. Its eastern opening had also had always been far to the south of the Lonely Mountains, and that would have left them with a long and difficult northward march when they got to the other side. North of Karak, the edge of Mirkwood drew closer at the borders of the great river, and though here the mountains too drew nearer, Bjorn advised them to take this way, for at a few days' ride due north of the Karak was gates to a little-known pathway through Mirkwood that led almost straight towards the Lonely Mountain. The goblins, said Bjorn, will not dare to cross the great river for 100 miles north of Karak, nor come near my house, as it is well protected at night. But I should ride fast, for if they make their raid soon, they will cross the river to the south and scour all the edge of the forest, and so as to cut you off. And wargs run swifter than ponies. Still, you are safer going north, even though you seem to be going nearer their strongholds, for that is what they will expect. And they will have the longer ride to catch you. Be off now, quick as you may. And that is why they were now riding in silence, galloping wherever the ground was grassy and smooth, with the mountains dark on their left, and in the distance the line of the river, with its trees drawing ever closer. The sun had only just turned west when they started, and till evening it lay golden on the land about them. It was difficult to think of pursuing goblins behind when they had put so many miles between them and Bjorn's house. They began to talk and sing again, and to forget about the dark forest path that lay in front. But in the evening, when the dusk came on and the peaks of the mountains glowered against the sunset, they made camp and set a guard, which most of them slept uneasily with dreams in which came along with the howling of hunting wolves and the cries of goblins. Still, the next morning dawned bright and fair again. It was there was an autumn-like mist, white upon the ground, and the air was chill, but soon the sun rose, red in the east, and the mist vanished, and while the shadows were still long, they were off again. So they rode now for 2 more days, and all the while they saw nothing save grass and flowers and birds and scattered trees, and occasionally small herds of red deer browsing or sitting at noon in the shade. Sometimes Bilbo saw the horns of the harts sticking up out of the long grass, and at first he thought they were dead branches in the tree. That third evening they were so eager to press on, for Bjorn had said that they should reach the forest gate only on the fourth, early on the 4th day, that they rode still forward after dusk and into the night beneath the moon. As the light faded, Bilbo thought he saw to the right or to the left the shadowy form of a great bear prowling along in the same direction. But only if he dared. But if he dared to mention it to Gandalf, the wizard only said, "Hush, take no notice." Next day started before dawn, and though their night had been short, as soon as it was light, they could see the forest coming as it were to meet them, or waiting for them, like a black and frowning wall before them. The land began to slope up, and it seemed to the hobbit that the silence began to draw upon them. Birds began to sing less. There were no more deer. Not even rabbits were seen. By the afternoon, they had reached the eaves of Mirkwood and were resting almost beneath the great overhanging boughs of its outer trees. Their trunks were huge and gnarled. Their branches twisted. Their leaves were long and dark. Ivy grew on them and trailed along the ground. Well, here is Mirkwood, said Gandalf, the greatest of the forests of the northern world. I hope you like the look of it. Now you must send back the excellent ponies you have borrowed. The dwarves were inclined to grumble at this, but the wizard told them they were fools. Bjorn is not as far off as you seem to think, and you had better keep your promises anyway, for he is a bad enemy. Mr. Baggins' eyes are sharper than yours, and if you have not seen each night after dark a great bear going along with us or sitting far off in the moon watching our camps, not only to guard you and guide you, but also to keep an eye on the ponies too. Bjorn may be your friend, but he loves his animals as his children. You do not guess what kindness he has shown you in letting the dwarves ride them so far so fast, nor what would happen to you if you tried to take them into the forest. What about the horse then? Said Thorin. You didn't mention sending that back. I don't, because I'm not sending it back. I'm not sending it. What about your promise then? I will look after it. I am not sending the horse back. I am riding it. Then they knew that Gandalf was going to leave them at the very edge of Mirkwood. And they were in despair, but there was nothing they could say that would change his mind. Now we had this all out before when we landed on the Carrock, he said. It is no use arguing. I have, as I told you, some pressing business away south, and I am already late through bothering with you people. We may meet again before it is all over, and then again, of course, we may not. That depends on your luck and on your courage and sense. And I am sending Mr. Baggins with you. I have told you before that he has more about him than you guess, and you will find that out before long. So cheer up, Bilbo, and don't look so glum. Cheer up, Thorin and company. This is your expedition, after all. Think of the treasure at the end, and forget the forest and the dragon, at any rate, until tomorrow morning. When tomorrow morning came, he still said the same, and now there was nothing to do but to fill their water skins at the clear spring they found close to the forest gate and unpack their ponies. They distributed the package as fairly as they could, although Bilbo thought his lot was wearisomely heavy and did not at all like the idea of trudging for miles and miles with that on his back. Don't you worry, said Thorin. It will get lighter all too soon. Before long, I expect we shall all wish our packs heavier when the food begins to run short. Then, at last, they said goodbye to their ponies and turned their heads home. Off they trotted gaily, seeming very glad to put their tails towards the shadow of Mirkwood. As they went away, Bilbo could have sworn that the thing like a bear left the shadows of the tree and shambled off quickly after them. Now Gandalf, too, said his farewell. Bilbo sat on the ground, feeling very unhappy and wishing he was beside the wizard on his tall horse. He had gone just inside the forest after breakfast, a very poor one, and it had seemed dark in there in the morning, as dark in there in the morning as it was at night, and very secret. Sort of watching and waiting feeling, he said to himself. Goodbye, said Gandalf to Thorin, and goodbye to you all. Goodbye. Straight through the forest is your way now. Don't stray off the track. If you do, it's 1,000 to 1. You never find it again and never get out of Mirkwood, and then I don't suppose I or anyone else will ever see you again. We really have to go through, groaned the hobbit. Yes, you do, said the wizard. If you want to get to the other side, you must either go through or give up your quest, and I am not going to allow you to back out now, Mr. Baggins. I am ashamed of you for thinking of it. You have got to look after these dwarves for me, he laughed. No, said Bilbo. I didn't mean that. I meant, is there no way around? There is, if you care to go 200 miles or so out of your way to the north and twice that to the south, but you wouldn't get a safe path even then. There are no safe paths in this part of the world. Remember, you are over the edge of the wild now and in for all sorts of fun wherever you go. Before you could get around Mirkwood to the north, you would be right along the slope of the Grey Mountains, and they are simply stiff with goblins and hobgoblins and orcs of the worst description. Before you could get around it to the south, you would end up in the land of the necromancer, and even you, Bilbo, don't need me to tell you tales of that black sorcerer. I don't advise you to go anywhere near the places overlooked by his dark tower. Stick to the forest track, keep your spirits up, hope for the best, and with a tremendous slice of luck, you may come out one day to see the long marshes lying below you, and beyond them, high in the east, the lonely mountain where dear old Smaug lives, although I hope he is not expecting you. Very comforting, to be sure, growled Thorin. Goodbye. If you don't want to come with us, you'd better get off without any more talk. Goodbye, then, and really, goodbye, said Gandalf, and he turned his horse and rode off into the west. But he could not resist the temptation to have the last word before he passed quite out of hearing. He turned to them, put his hands to his mouth, and called to them. They could hear his voice faintly. Goodbye. Be good. Take care of yourselves. Don't leave the path. Then he galloped away and was soon lost to sight. Oh, goodbye and go away, grumbled the dwarves, all the more angry because they were really filled with dismay at losing him. Now began the most dangerous part of all the journey. They each shouldered their heavy pack and water skin, which was their share, and turned from the light that lay in the lands outside and plunged into the forest. I need more practice, but thank you. So that was chapter 7. Yes, excellent. My throat is kind of killing me, so I think I am gonna leave it off there. We will. Let's see. Our next stream is on Thursday. Tentatively, it is for 5:15, like today's stream. That might change. We'll see. But tentatively, that's the timing. That is, of course, our research stream, so it's going to be very math heavy. And then, of course, on Sunday, there will be a Sunday morning paper. We used it for a specific math purpose last time. I initially wanted to do a philosophy paper, but I just needed to get that math paper covered, so that's why we did that, because I'm using it for what I'm doing. However, hopefully next Sunday we will be able to do that philosophy paper idea. So if there's any particular paper that you think would make a good Sunday morning paper, please feel free to send it my way, and we can go through it, and it should be fun. All right. Well, I hope you all have a wonderful evening. And, I know what we're going to do. We're going to, we're going to try and raid Toasty. Let's see, raid, raid, there we go. Toasty Morsel. She is playing a some kind of adventure game or something, some story focused game. Regardless, she is a wonderful person. So I'm just setting up this raid to go run over there, but I hope you have a great evening. And I will catch you back here Thursday, probably in the evening. I will, if any change happens, I'll let you know. So, all right. Thank you so much. Raid, the raid, the raid. And off we go into the wild blue toasty morsel. That came out wrong. All right, let's go.